Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Nerd Ledger. We're trying something new today because, listen, my computer is dog shit.
Yep.
My Discord is dog shit.
Yep.
And so here we are. Here we are using the pre-whatever, like the Riverside technology within Spotify for podcasters, and it's the first time, so we're seeing how this works. Welcome to the Nerd Ledger. I'm Cage. Chair is here as well. He had to use Google Chrome for this, and that really upset him.
I'm
So
really upsetty spaghetti right now.
yeah, but nevertheless, we are here. And yeah, it's taken us 40 minutes to get to this point. So I'm going to speed run everything I have to say before we talk about the Acolyte episode 7 with spoilers. So first of all, we were supposed to record yesterday but couldn't because my power was out. It was 114 degrees. I was suffering. I had to go back to work. I worked for like an extra 2.5 hours just to come home and be up till 2 a.m. because it was 85 degrees in my house and it wouldn't cool down because I had no power. And then I woke up at 5 a.m. so I got 3 hours of sleep because my power came back on at 2 a.m. And then I went to work and then I drank lots of protein coffee and all that good stuff. Now, nerd news, real quick. Captain America Brave New World trailer dropped today. Don't know if you watched it, Chair. Pretty
No, I've
good.
not. Oh, I'll check it out.
It's pretty good. We got a snippet at the very end of Red Hulk, which we all kind of knew was going to come. But
Oh, we
looks,
did. Yes, yeah.
yeah,
Of
yeah,
course. Yeah,
totally.
of course. Red Hulk. We fucking saw him come from miles away. He's red. He's the Hulk, but he's from the planet Redgaron or whatever the fucking. He got
No,
hit with like red radiation or whatever the fucking.
no.
He's fucking red. He got hit with the red nuke. The red skull hit him with the red nuke, and now he's the red fucking Hulk.
That didn't happen.
Oh, okay.
But all right. Yeah. Also, there was like an Agatha all along trailer, whatever. I don't care. To be honest, the show might be a sleeper. It might be like insanely good.
And
Um,
like Andor, like I was saying, Andor. Like, who the fuck wants to watch a show about Andor? Yeah.
yeah. But I didn't watch the trailer because I don't care. Um, and then last but not least, I guess, is Spider-Man Noir, which is going to be an Amazon animated series starring Nicolas Cage as Spider-Man Noir. He talked about some stuff with the show, and yeah, it's going to be coming eventually, and people should be excited about it or something. Anyway, that's it. That's all the news. That's all I wanted to say. Um,
Oh.
so, the Acolyte.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you want to start or you want me to start, but one of us got to start.
So how do you want to do this? You want to break down the episode? You just want to just talk about it in general because we're, running a little short on time. Like I'm not, I'm down to talk about it for 30 minutes, like I promised, and play some games.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like, again,
So
the
let me
spoiler warning.
yeah, spoiler warning. So let me pose a question to you, Red. Let's just discuss it, right? Okay. Do you think that this episode felt not out of place, but out of order?
Um, in
Do you think
I
do
think
you
it's the
think that
wrong question, but the answer is still yes.
Okay. Do you think that the twins' narrative would have been more compelling had you seen this episode earlier on in the season, rather than seeing it this late in?
Not necessarily earlier on. Just
Mm.
the issue I've had since the beginning is how poorly executed this show is. And like to me, this is another example of that, right? Like episode 1 and 2 weren't awful. Like they had enough there to like get you
Yeah,
invested a little bit.
like I talked about the practical effects and the world building and such. That's what really
Right.
sold me for those first two episodes. Was like the era feels just distinct. It feels very distinct from all the eras of Star Wars that we know.
Right.
So
And then
yeah.
episode 3 is the entire episode is a flashback, kills all the momentum in my opinion of that the show was trying to build, and I don't care about those characters yet, but they want you to care. And so like to me, an episode like that would have been better if it was like intercut between the modern day and the past. Like this whole episode being a flashback just throws me out of it. And then episode 4 it's not great, but it's not bad. They're walking through the forest, whatever. They're trying to find Kelnaka, all that stuff. Okay, episode 5, a really good episode, building all this stuff. Episode 6, more building. Everybody's waiting for the next week. And then episode 7 is just another entire episode of a flashback, which is just a new perspective on the episode we got in episode 3. And, like, it's not that it's, like, out of place. It's just, I still don't care. Like, okay, cool. We got the episode from the perspective of the twins and the witches. Now we're getting the episode from the perspective of the Jedi. I don't want either of those episodes. Cool, a Wookiee is fighting, Jedi Wookiee, awesome. Yep. Cool, some cool effects, some cool lightsaber battles. The whole thing is supposed to be this whole, like, oh, by the way, the Jedi, they're going to lie to the council and whatever, and, like, all this stuff. And it's like, okay, but I still don't care because the story I care about isn't this. And if they wove these stories together in a better, I don't know, narrative direction, like, it would just be better. But it's not, because they just executed it so poorly, in my opinion. Like, there's no narrative flow to this story. And I don't know if it's because, like, some of the motivations and some of the story is pretty poorly written to the point where, like, they're like, well, let's just throw in these random episodes so you forget about that before we get back to the stuff you actually find interesting. Because, again, there's a lot to find interesting about this show. Like, if you have an open mind to it and you're not just, like, looking for things to be like, that breaks canon, that breaks lore, whatever, because there's 1,000 examples of these things happening in a previous Star Wars, but nobody cares because, hey, this guy's shirtless, that's fucking stupid, we shouldn't do this sexualization thing. Okay, but Anakin's been shirtless, Kylo Ren's been shirtless, like, we've had all these examples of shirtless men in Star Wars, and he's obviously a bad guy trying to seduce her, not, like, sexually, but to the dark side, right? Like, yeah, there's a purpose to these things. Also, she's spying on him.
Yeah.
So, it is what it is. Like, but again, like, there are interesting things within the show. There are interesting concepts within the show. They just execute the story and the storytelling so poorly that it makes me just not really care. And unfortunately, like, there's so much bad reaction to the show online. Like, so many people just, lol, this show's trash, lol, Disney shills, lol, you guys are dumb as fuck. And, like, it makes me want to defend the show, like, mentally. Like, I'm just like, because I feel like it's out of order. Like, if you hate it, just don't watch it. And, like, I get that's, like, easier said than done, but it's like, if you hate it, like, I don't know why you're investing so much time laughing at people who enjoy it, or laughing at Star Wars fans and acting as if you're not an actual Star Wars fan or you're the only real Star Wars. Like, all this fucking internet posturing is so fucking stupid to me. And I'm just like, there are things in the show to enjoy. Unfortunately, entire episodes of flashbacks are not it.
Yeah, I agree. I think, I agree. I think I enjoy the show probably a little bit more than you do. I'm not sure why that is. Like, I just think, I don't know. I'm just find the narrative a little bit more compelling. Maybe it's because I played a lot of the Jedi games, growing up. So I like the idea of, like, a Jedi, like, Jedi's going on adventure, like, in the wider galaxy and such like that. I just really get pulled in by that fantasy, I guess, And there's, like, a dark side Jedi out there, like, trying to seduce the apprentice to the dark side and all that, classic Star Wars shit. That stuff just really pulls me in and engages me. I think that if this episode would have been like episode 2, and then I think if I just feel like this episode should have come a little bit earlier, and I also feel like they need more episodes to completely tell what they're trying to tell here, and that they were kind of push and pulled between, hey, we need to show off really cool Star Wars shit, and, like, hey, we need to, like, we need to tell the story we want to tell here. It's hard to tell.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, a lot of the complaints people will have about the show, like, they wouldn't care about if the show was executed properly, I think. Like, there were people complaining, like, oh, Soul, like, oh, he wasn't powerful enough to hold up both bridges, or why didn't he just lift the girls, like, with the Force and bring them to him, or shout or something, like, to jump onto one platform or whatever. Like, sure, those could be valid criticisms, but you could literally break down anything Star Wars that way and be like, oh, why didn't they just do this? Why didn't they just do that? Like, whatever, right? Like, I mean, and there are thousands of memes of that too, like, of, like, one scene from Star Wars where, like, if a character would have done something different, it's just the credits, right? It's just over, right? Like, if Jyn Erso's dad would have been like, oh yeah, just fire some proton torpedoes, they would have never had to go to Scarif, right? Like,
Yeah.
It's just over. Then that's it. But
Yep. Yep.
that's not how stories necessarily work. Like, characters make decisions in world for their own reasons. It's not
Yes.
like, oh well, you could have just done this. Like, but again, nobody would actually care about that
I just
if
think that right now, like, we're in a really hyper rational kind of moment. Do you kind of understand, like, what I'm trying to, like, put out there? And, like, when characters make decisions that people would consider to be irrational, that people tend to have a more negative reaction. Because, like, we'll say, well, I would have done this, like, because they're watching
absolutely.
so many. So I feel like there's a lot of that energy out there right now, too.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely a part of it. But I think a lot of that criticism just comes from the show being so poorly executed in general. Like,
Yeah.
and again, I didn't watch the episode and then go, man, I really fucking hated that. It pisses me off. Like, the episode ended and I was like, all right. Like,
Yeah.
episode 7 is like, it's not what I wanted to see because, like, I think they're walking that fine line of like, oh, it's television, we should show you stuff instead of tell you it, right? We shouldn't just have Soul there telling May like this experience or whatever. But you interweave the flashbacks with what's happening in the modern day, where like the story that we're invested in or should be invested in, but instead it's just the entire episode is a flashback, and it just like, to me again, it just kills the momentum from the last episode. So it's like, it's whatever. Like, I'm not mad about it. I didn't hate the episode. I'm not telling everyone, oh, this show is dog shit. Like, my opinion really hasn't changed, aside from there are some really good episodes in the series. Other than that, like, it's not a great series and it's not an awful series. It's just it'll fade into obscurity probably. Like,
Well, maybe this one will fade into obscurity, but I hope that we get more movies from the High Republic that maybe are a little bit more well crafted, had a little more time, had more episodes to tell the narrative, to do all this backstory with all, like, there were a lot of Jedi involved here, man. There's only like what, 8 episodes?
Yeah.
There's tons of things going on already. Like, there's the Jedi Council and this and that and this and that, all these different characters and everything like that, and they're doing their best. Like, I just think that this is the problem with, like, streaming, man. Like, this so ununiform. There's no standard. It's hard to adapt the story you want to tell to the streaming platform if you don't know when you get in there and they tell you, oh, by the way, you can only do 8 episodes or something like that. Like,
Yeah.
you sit there in the conference room and you wait for them to say, okay, we're going to give you an 8 episode run, or we're going to give you 7 episodes to do this, or whatever the fuck, and each episode is going to be this minutes long, because that's what it is to them. It's like an arithmetic. It's a math. They break the math. They break it down to a math. And it's just soul crushing, man. Soul crushing.
Yeah. Yeah. It is what it is, like, and obviously, like, I don't think that the show creator does herself any favors with, like, the interviews she does. But to me, none of that's really relevant. Like, I don't care who the writers, the creators, the showrunners, the directors are. Like, that shouldn't necessarily impact the product in the way that, like, your view of those people shouldn't impact your view of the show, right? That's my personal belief. Obviously, it does. People will be like, oh, it's Harvey Weinstein's personal assistant, like, whatever. Like, she's awful. I'm not going to support her, which is your right. Like, do whatever you want, right? But I don't think those things should matter. But then when she does interviews and, like, just kind of, they're not great, the interviews she's done. So, but there are things in episode 7 to like. And there are interesting ideas within the episode, obviously. Like, people might be mad about it, but, like, the idea that, like, they're essentially misleading the Jedi Council.
Yep.
And like, Soul he's much younger here and obviously much less wise, and, his motivations don't necessarily make a lot of sense. But he really, well, it makes sense. People will say it doesn't make sense. It makes sense in the way that, like, they're there because of this vergence, right? This vergence in the Force, which is the same thing that Qui-Gon says about Anakin, right? he says, I sense a virgins in the Force, and like centered around a person. Say, yeah, boy, Anakin, right? Whatever. Yeah, the virgins, because he was made, from a high concentration of midichlorians. And these girls were also made, but by a person specifically to make them. And it's kind of like one of the big kind of reveals in the episode is like essentially they're one person split into two, which I guess is what twins are. But it's like this like kind of like singular mind kind of thing. And I think that's what part of the ascension is to like make it more of a singular mind. But Osha obviously didn't finish the ascension, so she becomes her own person more or less. And then, we kind of get this thing with the witches where they have the ability to get inside your mind. And I don't really understand the mechanics of that, because when Anastasia was in Torben's mind, she was still there. But then, like, later in the episode, when, like, they tried to go inside the minds, like, they, like, turned into some dark, shadow matter or something. And, like, some of them did, not all of them. But Anastasia was turning into dark shadow matter to try to get inside one of the minds. And then she got killed by Soul, which a lot of people also had a problem with, because they're like, oh, why would he just stab her? Well, obviously he knows that she's trying to fucking do some shit, and he's like trying to stop her.
He didn't know. Yeah, he didn't know. Like, you saw that expression of like regret as soon as he like actually stabbed her. Like, he saw her go to smoke. He didn't know he was gonna hit her with her fucking lightsaber. She like turned into like a puff of cloud and shit.
Yeah. But then like all the other witches are like united to get into Kelnaka's mind, and they're not turning into shadowy thingies.
Yeah, well, maybe they're not special though, because there's some people in Star Wars that are more special than others.
Yeah, because Mother Coral then turns into a smoky thing and just like leaves, right?
Yeah.
So she's, as far as we know, still alive, I believe, and she's probably the actual like Sith Lord, who like is above Kimmer, or something. I don't know, but May witnesses her mom being killed by Soul, which does more inform her, her vengeance plot, but then she just wanted to abandon that plot for some reason out of nowhere, and just turn herself in, instead of, continuing with wanting vengeance. I don't know why she wouldn't want vengeance anymore. But, and I don't know what discovering Osha still alive would have to do with that, because it's not like she believed that the Jedi killed Osha. Like, she just thought Osha died because the whole place was collapsing because of the fire she started. Like, there's no reason that Osha being alive would make her not want to get revenge for her mother being killed by these 4 Jedi. Well, Soul in particular. So again, to me, it's just flimsy. But we see this kind of like underworld Hades thread thing, where like these witches are all working together to infiltrate Kelnaka's mind, and then Indara like severs that connection, and by severing that thread, like they all just die.
Yeah.
Which is kind of stupid, but again, conceptually interesting.
Yeah, conceptually, like, we've had there's always, like, I don't know, like that. I feel like it's almost like a trope, like, oh, the evil people are connected to the person, and when the connection is dissevered, like, they die immediately or whatever. I feel like I've seen that before a couple times.
Yeah, but it's usually if the person dies.
Yeah.
Right.
Nah.
Like if Kelnaka died, then it would make sense.
Either way, they all could have been like super duper angry and like been like channeling all their life energy into it too, like to control Kelnaka because he was such a powerful Wookiee Jedi or whatever the fuck,
Sure. Yeah, like their life force gets sucked.
This made really also appreciate the dude who was hovering in the temple by himself. I keep forgetting his name.
Torben.
He obviously the guy obviously went through a traumatic experience, And
and his lightsaber skills were really cool too.
Did you get the napkin? Hold on.
Yeah, you get the napkin.
Hold on.
No, you're good.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah. Torben was pretty cool. Like, I mean, and you understand like bits of things, right? You understand bits of why he, did the thingamabob and just became a meditating monk kind of thing. understand bits of it. But even then, like, she infiltrated his mind, kind of like threw him off. And then I guess maybe it's the witnessing.
Sorry about that.
No, yeah, no problem. I think it's maybe more witnessing for Torben, like the Jedi willingly misleading the council, and like even having his own regrets of like he just wanted to go home, and if he like hadn't, felt that way and been so hasty, like maybe things would have turned out differently.
Yeah, watching your friend get possessed by a bunch of witches and then almost smashing your head in against a wall is also pretty scary too. Like,
yeah, especially from a Wookiee.
I like the use of blood. Like, we don't see blood a lot in Star Wars, right? Like the only time we ever saw blood in Star Wars was back before it was it's basically like a plot hole. It was in the very first movie, right? And there shouldn't have been any blood because it was a lightsaber that he cut his arm with. So we know the lightsaber is the whole thing. The reason Obi-Wan calls them an elegant weapon is because it basically like kills people instantly. Unless, like, you need to say something dramatic before you die.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you die. And then it's, like, supposed to be, like, a really clean, like, clean way of killing someone. Like, where blaster bolts, like, freaking, like, fry you and shit like that.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, we get blood a little bit in Empire as well when Luke is being attacked by the Wampa.
Yeah. Oh,
so.
Yeah, it's Wampa. And you cut some open, but
a little bit.
Either way, like use of blood here, like I just think is very dramatic and like it's a rare occurrence in Star Wars. Let's put it like that, right?
Yeah.
Like in the Mandalorian, how often do you see characters like bleeding out all over themselves? So.
Well, with blasters and lightsabers, there's no real room for blood, because it just cauterizes the wounds.
Yeah, and I think it just shows how intense everything is. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I thought like elements of the episode were cool, but like, again, the motivations and things don't always feel solid. And Dara the whole time was like, okay, we're here for this purpose and this purpose only. We shouldn't interfere. We shouldn't try to take these kids away and all this stuff. And like, also they're too old and whatever. But then like, they just do it anyway because Sol is like really desperate to do it, and Dara, even after they test the kids, and Dara's like, no, they're too old, we're not going to bring them with us, they're not going to train to be Jedi, and Sol's like, oh, fuck you, I'm going to go infiltrate the castle and fucking take the kids. Like, because like, yeah, he is genuinely worried about them, but maybe that's part of the hard truth of being a Jedi. You kind of learn like some things you can't affect, some things you can't change. Whereas maybe like you think altruistically that you can. So, and then, they end up essentially killing all the witches. And then like, well, we'll just blame it on May and say she started a fire and it killed all the witches, even though it was us.
Yeah.
So.
I saw a bunch of people complaining too about like the freaking the castle catching on fire or whatever. It's like, fucking goddamn it, guys! There's fires in space all the time in Star Wars. Shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
People complained about the fire in space in the first episode as well.
Yeah.
And it's like there are hundreds of examples of fires in space in Star Wars. So, like, but yeah, they did show in this episode like what is causing the fire to spread, and it's like the circuitry and the wiring and all this other stuff within the castle, right? And ultimately it's not the fire that killed anyone. It's they severed that connection, which is what ultimately killed the witches. So it makes sense why May would want revenge. It makes no sense why she would then decide, I'd rather risk my life in prison with the Jedi than continue to serve this bad guy.
Yeah. I don't know, like, again, just I think it's really, again, I've talked about this before, but I'm going to keep by it. Maybe it's like where we have the fundamental disagreement. I feel like they set May up to be a clown. Like, I feel like when she's running around on screen, I can see the red nose and the face paint. That everybody clowns on her all the time. In one episode, she like got captured and ran away 3 different times because they're trying to set her up as kind of a piece of shit. That's what I think. So I think that's why that plot holds up, because she's a dumb kid who doesn't know what's going on, who's been raised probably by like 5 different evil people that have all manipulated her for different reasons and done all this stuff, and now she's just looking out for number one, which is I need to get away as far as possible. And she, like, she saw all these things, but maybe after traveling in the galaxy for a bit and encountering more Jedi, and the fact that no Jedi pulled a lightsaber on her just to kill her immediately, when even though she was threatening their lives, I just think that's I think that goes a long way for that decision, her making that decision, especially when one Jedi straight up took poison because he couldn't live with himself anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I get that. This guy's calling me. He's calling me.
Oh, I wonder who it is.
Yeah, this guy. He hasn't called me for a while. It's been like a week, but it's probably because I work every day. So, he knows. He knows. But yeah. So, I don't know. Overall, like, I just feel like I cared more about what's happening now. And I don't care as much, I think the people making the show, to be fair to them, they're thinking, oh, like, this is very clever. We're going to show one episode from the perspective of the witches and the kids, and then we're going to turn it on its head and show it from the perspective of the Jedi. And, people are going to be like, it's going to open their eyes, and it's going to be like this crazy things happening. Unfortunately, like, it doesn't, again, because of the execution, I don't think it hits the way they want it to. Like, it just doesn't feel as powerful to me. But if for people who it does hit for, like, that's great. Like, I think it, you never want to take away, well, at least I don't, someone else's enjoyment of something. And, like, for everybody who does love the show and has thoroughly enjoyed everything in the show, like, that's wonderful. I don't think it's a very good show, mostly because of the execution and the storytelling. But, again, there's a lot of very interesting ideas within the show.
Yeah.
And honestly, like, I'm not going to say, like, it's the show honors George Lucas in any way. Like, I don't care about any of that stuff. But when it comes to great ideas and poor execution, George Lucas is kind of an expert. So, and again, because we grew up with the prequels, we appreciate them. And I love all three of them. I know you hate Attack of the Clones, but I still think it's I still enjoy large parts of the movie despite cringing at other parts of it.
Yeah, the droid factory is cool, I guess. Like that.
Yeah, Detective Obi-Wan is pretty cool. The fight on Geonosis, and then the final fight with Dooku and Yoda, like, all very cool stuff. And within each of those movies are very interesting ideas, but written and directed by George Lucas isn't the best because his writing isn't great, and his direction, while underrated, isn't the best either. I do think he's a decent director, but the writing is where a lot of the prequels suffer, and that's why, people highly regard Empire as one of the best, because it's George Lucas's ideas in the hands of somebody else, right? Like, George Lucas is dictating the ideas and the plot points when someone else is executing it. And I think that's when Star Wars is at its best. And I think the Acolyte, even if they're not George Lucas's ideas, does have interesting ideas, but also very poor execution.
Yeah.
So, hopefully the season finale is good and ties up loose ends and doesn't just, like, leave you on, like, wait till season 2 if there is one, because I think that would also be incredibly disappointing.
Yep.
So
we'll wait and see.
Yeah.
I just think we'll wait for the final episode, and then I'll have more cognizant views on the entire thing as a whole.
Well, the final episode will probably come out, like, Soul will be, like, finishing up the story about what we just saw, and then you'll get May's reaction, which I don't know. All he's going to do is say, oh, I could have saved you as well, but I chose Osha instead. Like, because she knows the rest of the story. She saw him kill her mother.
Yeah.
Go on.
That's I don't know what else to say. I just think that for right now we don't know how it's going to end. We don't know if everyone's going to get murdered. We don't know. So hopefully things.
Ooh, but if everyone got murdered, that would be pretty good.
Yeah, that's what I think. But I think that's what they're setting up for. Like, no one can contact that ship, and they're going to get murked. And
yeah.
Then the Jedi Order is gonna cover it up.
Well, yeah. I mean, they're not just gonna keep sending people to Kofar to fucking die. So.
Yeah, they are forever get chopped up. Chop.
Yeah, but anyway, I mean that takes us to 30 minutes, conveniently. So
convenient, highly convenient.
yeah. So next week is the finale. It's the finale of the Acolyte. So we'll be talking about that next week. Hopefully on Thursday if my power is active and everything goes according to plan. But yeah, then I don't know what we're going to talk about the week after that, and then the week after that, the 25th, Thursday, where we normally podcast, we won't be podcasting because we will be watching Deadpool and Wolverine, which will be very exciting. And then we'll probably talk about it, if I had to guess, on Saturday, because on Friday I'm seeing it again with my wife. Or we'll wait to talk about it. Who knows?
Probably just wait to talk about it. And I'll be honest with you, dude. I'm gonna figure this out next week. There may be a slightly 25% chance I might not be able to make it. My parents are taking off on a vacation suddenly without timing. They're just taking off on the 25th. And as you know, it's quite hot out here in July. And as you also know, I have a German Shepherd who is like my surrogate child, basically. So
I mean, you just run the AC for your surrogate child for 5 hours.
We've been leaving her alone in the house for a bit, but that'd be such a long time. So maybe my uncle or something will be around. I'm not sure. The problem with German Shepherds is if you leave them alone for too long, they're a really smart dog and they get up to really stupid shit because they're so smart. You know. So but I'll let you know as it gets closer, and I'll be sure to comp you back the ticket and everything like that.
No, you don't have to do that. It's fine. Yeah. It's already paid for, so a month ago. So, all right. Well, there you have it, guys. That's our thoughts on episode 7 of The Acolyte. Be sure to share yours because if you didn't know, if you listen to this on Spotify, if you don't, then this is irrelevant. But if you listen on Spotify, they just released a new feature for podcasts where you can comment on the podcast. So you can literally listen and then put a comment or whatever, and then we can respond to that comment. And so that's a cool new feature. So you can always just say, hey, you guys are fucking idiots. The show is dog shit. Or, hey, you guys are fucking idiots. The show's amazing, because, both of those could apply to us. So, thank you for listening. Be sure to like, comment, rate, review, subscribe, and click all the buttons. And goodbye. Say goodbye, Chair.
Goodbye.